This story begins with a certain female vampire saying, "Yeah, it must have been hard for you to get here, but if you want to meet him, you'll have to deal with our friends first." It's worth replacing that she speaks in a rather arrogant and self-righteous manner. It's the girl with her back turned to us for now, but that's not what's important yet. It's what she says to the female vampire: "Cut the crap and bring him. Your friends will be done in 3 minutes." You can see that this girl clearly dislikes fanged bloodsuckers based on her dialogue. The female vampire is standing on the second floor, in front of the railing, looking down on the girl haughtily and literally. She laughs snidely, confident of her victory. Afterwards, she, still standing on the edge, utters the words, "All right, 3 minutes." Sounds a little too confident. The girl herself is surrounded by hundreds of men in jackets, who, to all appearances, are just waiting for the command "face" from their mistress. It's hard to say what made them all gather here, whether it was the smell of blood or their loyalty to their mistress. They look at her with questioning eyes, as if she were just entertainment. They look skeptical and distrustful, as if they don't take her seriously and see her as prey for a predator. What insolence! One of the guys was getting a little too handsy, behaving with too much impunity in front of the seemingly fragile girl. Miranda, which is the name of this brave girl, first simply and relatively politely warns the not-so-far-sighted guy not to even think about touching her with his hands. The guy does not even think to take her words seriously, because what will she do to him there? A fragile and defenseless girl who does not even have a weapon. "Ha, that's nice. What a hussy," he said. And to secure his words, doubting her, he put his hand on her shoulder, which she certainly didn't like. And then, Miranda's punch is not long in coming. The guy gets what he deserves, a hand slap to his pale face. After that, the girl pathetically utters the phrase, "I warned you." And you can't argue, she really warned him. But what did he do? He did not listen. Now let him sit, or even lie down and think about his behavior. The guys didn't like it very much. They literally went wild and furious, looking at the girl with frenzied glances. They seemed to be ready to tear her apart. But can the girl cope with so many bloodsuckers? Thinking back, the girl tells how it all began. 10 years ago, people who could turn into vampires began to appear. Hiding their nature, they killed left and right, spreading only fear and terror. But a girl promises to reverse this hell. She is motivated at least by the people she cares for and loves. She will fight for her loved ones no matter what it takes. These people, the only light for her in this darkened world. What about her life? Is there no point in fighting for it? The girl recalls the moments that give her the motivation to continue and not give up in this struggle. Returning to the now familiar scene of the fight, the girl gets into a fighting stance. She is ready to fight back for as long as it takes. And now, with an equally furious face, full of rage and determination, the girl is ready for battle. She only says that as far as her life is concerned, she is ready to give even 10 of them. The events are transferred to a certain unremarkable and very poor neighborhood, where gangsterism and violence reign supreme. There are posters everywhere that read, "Government for Countermeasures Against Vampires," and "Stop the Vampire Massacre." A trio of criminal-looking guys asking the kids where the priest is. The children immediately realize that these are not good guys, and one of the children, grabbing a pot with a plant in his hands, starts screaming for them to leave them alone. One of the bandits scoffs, calling the loudest kid a barking brat. The man grabs the girl by the collar, wanting to punish her for such insolent behavior as it seemed to them. But the girl resists and screams. The most important of the bandits said that they had come here for signatures. Addressing the children, he said that because of them, their construction schedule had been disrupted, and that they would not get off that easy, even as orphans, so they should call the priest here immediately. But suddenly, out of nowhere, a girl comes running out, calling the thugs names as they well deserved. The girl, with a bag over her head with a hole for an eye, was holding a basin of water, which she was obviously trying to throw at the men. The most important of them didn't react at all, so the surprise effect didn't work on him, alas. He immediately grabs the girl by the bag from behind, pulling her head back, making it impossible for her to realize her plan to pour water on them. The man only arrogantly says that everyone in the neighborhood is trash, and she is no exception. The children standing to the side immediately started yelling at the main bandit to let her go. The same bandit who grabbed the girl started pulling the bag off her head, showing interest in who was hiding under it. The girl fiercely resisted. But suddenly, out of nowhere, a guy appears, asking the whole campaign for directions. The bandits only asked him in a bewildered and rude manner who he was and what he was doing here. A very nice-looking young guy, holding a lit cigarette and a smartphone, politely asks where he can find the police station here. The bandits probably know where the police station is. But again, though he asked them politely, the three men told him in the same rude manner to look for the plot himself. Without showing any fear, the guy simply said okay and turned around. Distracted by the guy, these creeps completely forgot about the girl. But soon they remembered her again, telling her to go and call the priest. But the guy did seem to stand up for the innocent, and he said, "But you know, you've got some pretty rough language." Whoa, is this going to be a big deal? When he got close to the bandits, the guy stood head to head with the most important of them and said that he could recommend to these scumbags a great restaurant where they served balanda and chowder on schedule. Men don't appreciate his help and tell him he's dead. Oh my God, something's about to happen. But suddenly, one of the bandits, looking at the guy, suddenly remembered something. Did the boy's face look familiar to him? He whispers something in the boss's ear, while the guy himself stands boldly in front of them, just waiting for the moment to kick their asses. I don't know what the main bandit was told by his subordinate, but they abruptly turned around and left. Maybe they were interested in his advice about the free restaurant? Seeing the bandits departing in the distance with not the warmest of glances, the girl immediately asks the children, worrying if they are all right. The girl apologizes to the children for coming so late, but the children do not hold a grudge against her. They immediately hug her. Obviously, she is like a big sister to them, if not their own mother. The guy only stood there with a smile and listened to all this casual conversation between the girl and the kids. As he was about to leave, a girl called out to him and thanked him for saving her. He said with a look of surprise on his face that he hadn't done anything special so-and-so, just didn't want to see the thugs get their way. The girl remembered the guy's question about the police station and said she'd help him. The guy freezes for a second. After that, he continues on his way, shouting to the girl that he knows exactly where the station is. She removed the bag from her head, and with only a look like a crush, saw the guy off. Speaking of the girl, she has lived here in a Catholic orphanage since she was 10 years old, and situations like today are no surprise to the girl, because they happen here on a regular basis, thanks to which she is no longer afraid of anything. But as the girl herself says, there is a downside to this. She is constantly pestered by children, asking why she sits at home, to which she replies that she has so many friends that she is already on her nerves. Miranda stayed home all the time. Her children told her that it was time to get ready for college. Although the girl relaxedly replied that everything would be okay because she had more than 300 friends in social networks. What ended up happening was that she missed some sort of hangout where everyone meets everyone else. Because of this, the girl has to say hello to absolutely everyone since she doesn't know anyone. She even has to eat alone due to the fact that she has not found any companions. The girl pretends that her friends are simply late all the time, not wanting to show loneliness. Miranda really doesn't want that fate, but alas, after failing to find any friends for herself, she decides that she will just be friends with the whole college and heads off to class. Suddenly a tragedy happens in the neighborhood. Some student died from being bitten by a vampire. All the people around them panic. Sitting on the bus, the girl looks out the window and ponders that this is the third incident in the neighborhood. What's worst for Miranda is that the tragedy happened right next door to her home. And it was someone's daughter. The neck of the deceased clearly shows the bite from the vampire's fangs. All this excites and frightens everyone, because this is not a coincidence, but a real case, and not the first. A man on TV on a bus asks the audience if they know where vampires even came from. Is it a species that existed long ago, or is it genetic evolution? The girl takes the cross that hangs around her neck and prays. The announcer goes on to say that one way or another, it's important to exercise strict caution and not to go out on the streets after the sirens have sounded. And most importantly, he adds that no one should ever try to fight one of the vampires. It's evening time. Miranda and her fellow students have gone to a bar where they are relaxing and playing a so-called game to the death. The loser of this game drinks. By the way, this bar seems to be a favorite spot for college kids. Playing the game of who drinks the most The girl unfortunately never gets to meet anyone. All she sees are awkward smiles and laughter. But as the girl points out, alcohol is her present-day life hack, and only thanks to it, she can get to know her drinking companions well, after which everyone becomes best friends. But there's one problem. The girl doesn't get drunk at all. When she realizes this, she seems to be completely despondent and resigned to the fact that she will never have any friends. But luck strikes. All the students shout that they're going to play at Big Ben's table. Big Ben is a champion in the game of who can outdrink who, because he has a great resistance to alcohol. Few students dare to play with him, but to watch others lose, they are always happy. A woman's voice from the crowd makes Ben turn around. The girl hints to him that she's ready to fight him. Oh my God, did she drink too much of it? That's some stamina she's got. After her victory in this alcoholic fight, all the students suddenly started to get to know her and ask for her number. They also invited her to the study group that takes place every night. At last, the girl was glad to find herself some much-anticipated friends. Her newfound friends share the truth about what they call her in college. And they call her Northwest Southeast, all because she says hello to every student who walks by. One of the guys asks Miranda that she didn't know who was in their department, did she? Of course she replies that she didn't know. Oh well. Trying to stay on trend, the girl calls everyone out for drinks again. But there is no time for the young people to celebrate properly, as they are distracted by a siren. Entertainment is good, but the siren cannot be ignored, so the students are going to leave. Reluctantly, the students disperse, as it is already 11 o'clock in the evening. Miranda has to go before it gets dark too. Suddenly, one of the guys, whose name is Mike, offers to walk the girl home. Smiling sweetly, he asks the girl if she minded. She doesn't mind, of course. However, she doesn't know what to say in such cases, because it seems to be the first time she is accompanied home at all. She is embarrassed that such a rather popular guy flirts with her and pays attention to her. In view of this, the girl politely tells the guy that she can go home herself. Besides, it is dangerous at such a time. The guy, smiling, asks her what's so dangerous. The girl was confused. Either his smile embarrassed her or the guy asked a stupid question, because what was dangerous at night? Well, at least vampires or bandits, and even worse, vampires are bandits. Mike makes casual conversation with her, inquiring about her life. He says that he has heard that she lives in a Catholic church, but that it is uncomfortable. The girl says it's okay though, because she doesn't live in a church. She tells the guy that the house is always noisy and the atmosphere is full of energy, because she lives with her favorite siblings. The guy only looked at the girl with a kind of amorousness. And now it's past midnight. A siren is blaring outside, warning people not to go outside. Everyone is in a hurry to get home, especially those who don't live in this neighborhood, and so they run as fast as they can to the last bus for the day. In all this atmosphere of panic, the girl watches people running down the street, people locking the windows of their houses with fear in their eyes, and the guy next to Miranda is the only one strolling serenely. The girl is worried about the guy because he's seeing her off, but how will he get home? They reach the bus stop where Miranda will catch the last bus. But as for the boy, she says the place is full of empty houses, so there's no one to help him in case of danger. Mike says it's okay, besides telling the girl, "Isn't there too much hype around these vampires?" Miranda stares, not sure what he means by that. Suddenly a scolding is heard outside. Some man in a suit pushes a guy to the pavement, telling him that he would chase him to the underworld because he owes him money. The guy begs the bandit to let him go, because it would be better for both of them. The girl immediately recognized this bandit. A thug with a scar on his face tells the guy that he's just going to kill him today. He grabs a guy lying on the pavement by the collar and starts punching him. Miranda can't look at all of this. She clutched her bag tighter and closed her eyes. But suddenly something happens that forces her to open her eyes after all. She clearly didn't expect this outcome. In the blink of an eye, the guy who is lying on the pavement abruptly rips his hand through the bandit's stomach, punching through. He says lastly that he warned me and told me to just leave. The girl realizes with horror that there is a vampire in front of her, and stammering she says it out loud even. The guy next to Miranda says pathetically, confirming that yes, it's a vampire. And he runs out of there the same hour, calling his mom for help. Oh, it all started out so well. Well, as they say, there are many girls in the world, but your mom has only you. With disappointment in her voice, the girl shouted at the guy running away. Wasn't he the one who said there was too much hype around vampires? I guess he only had a tough guy image. Finished with the bandit, the vampire guy starts heading towards the girl. She yells at him to stay away from her. The girl grabs her bag and starts looking for something in there, something her father once gave her. She rummages through her bag in a panic, but can't find anything. The vampire himself even asks her what she's looking for. The vampire taunts her, saying that if she's looking for a cross or garlic, it's a useless thing against his kind. Miranda looks around. She realizes with horror that it looks like the very thing she left at home. She calls for help. However, the guy tells her with a smile that it looks like she's all alone here. Oh, what's about to happen? With fear in her eyes, she hugs her bag and begs the vampire not to do this. The guy with the befuddled eyes asks her why she's afraid of vampires since they were all once human. Like her, for example. Laughing, the guy forcefully punches the wall next to the girl. The wall collapses like a house of cards. Looking with his blood-red eyes, the vampire says that this power, this blessing. Looking at the girl who is frozen with fear and can't even move, the guy says he likes that look on her face. His eyes glowed red, and he says he decided to bestow the same blessing on her. The girl yells for him to stay away from her, but at the same time, interrupting each other. The guy tells her that did she know that taking blood was better than any drugs in terms of sensation. Miranda had become quite desperate, and seemed almost resigned to her fate. The guy grabs the girl by the hair and yells at her. He opens his mouth, showing his sharp fangs while screaming at her that he will turn her into a vampire, make her just like him. But here's the twist. Suddenly the girl grabs him by the hair and he doesn't even realize what happened. All he sees is a strange glow. This glow is generated by the girl herself, which even makes her hair turn bright white. With this very glow, the girl pierces the vampire's head through. Miranda told herself, not again. She says to herself, I told you to stop, didn't I? But somehow it turns out that the girl was born a vampire. Oh my God, what a twist. The whole neighborhood is quiet. All the people sitting quietly in their houses, only a kitten licking carelessly sitting on the roof. But all of a sudden, something is streaking across the rooftops at an incredible speed. So fast everything happened that even the kitty didn't notice, only feeling something rushing past him very quickly. Turns out that sudden nighttime movement was Miranda, and so, after bouncing all over the neighborhood, she landed right outside her house. Abruptly entering the house, the girl searches for the very thing with panic. And suddenly he discovers her. It's a wreath of thorns that was in the laundry basket. She puts it on her head, and straight up exhales with a calm exhale, saying she is definitely the sloppiest person ever. The point is, a girl comes forward when she's very agitated. It is only with the help of this crown of thorns that she calms down, reversing her vampire form. Flopping down on the bed, she says to herself, reminding herself to remember to take the wreath to college next time, or else there will be trouble if she gets caught wearing it like that. Anyway, it's not easy for her to live among people hiding her true self. The girl lies on the bed and stares at the ceiling, dreaming only of living like a normal person. Someone sets down a tin can of espresso, clarifying, "You said your name was Miranda, right? Miranda Whiteley?" Miranda replies that yes, that's exactly right. She is surprised that the professor is so nice to her. The girl looks questioningly at the teacher. The teacher replies that she studied so hard even after the lecture was over that it would be a good idea for her to drink something invigorating. This peace-loving man says he also has to make sure she has the strength for the next couple. The girl, smiling, thanked the teacher. Speaking of Professor Alan Gilbert, this is his first year, but he is incredibly kind and genuine, so much so that he knows all of his students by name. By the way, after last night's party, Miranda is being greeted by everyone. When the professor himself was still a student, he worked 3 jobs to pay for his studies. He had a difficult childhood with a single mother, but all is well now. Plus, they say he's about to become a father himself. Miranda looks at the professor with admiration and promises herself that she will work just as hard. The girl's comrades say they heard her encounter a vampire, but as the students themselves say, she was incredibly lucky to be alive after her encounter with one of the bloodsuckers. They walked around discussing all sorts of topics, remembering that Mike had acted like a cowardly chicken by running away and leaving Miranda alone to fend for herself. Suddenly, a girl walking nearby says the frightening fact that among 1,000 people, one is a vampire. She scares herself by saying that it turns out there are at least 2 vampires in college. If she'd known that one of the vampires was walking beside her right now. The girl panics, keeps scaring herself, saying, what if one of the vampires is even on their stream? Yeah, Miranda is freaking out because she is one of the vampires on their stream. But as we remember, Miranda starts to turn from a lot of excitement. and now she starts to get just as excited, which makes her hair take on a life of its own, mussing up. But the girl guffaws, saying it's just a reaction to the pain in her stomach. As she walks past the students, Miranda hears a conversation about an incident in which a vampire slaughtered an entire family. She walks past the other students and hears them talking, hoping that soon all the vampires will die because they are monsters. The girl stopped suddenly and thought for a moment. Because of who Miranda was born to be, she couldn't play with other children. Her only friends were books, as the girl was alone all the time. She looked enviously at the campaigns of children who were having fun together. Though the girl prayed every day and hoped she would meet a friend she could chat and play with, she remembers reading a book and suddenly some voice said, "Wow, you can read books like that?" It was a guy with a book in his hands who told her that he was reading the same thing she was. Miranda remembers this guy as the one who made her believe in the power of prayer. And having already started walking together, sitting on the swings, they ask each other questions. The boy asks her that she finishes school early, since she is always in the same place. The girl replies that she just reads books. She often heard gossip from passing children, who always saw her sitting and reading. They laughed behind her back that she couldn't even count. The girl lowered her gaze bashfully, answering the guy's question about books. The guy says she's not going to school. Miranda tensely looks down. She's preparing for a wave of criticism from her boyfriend. However, the guy on the contrary said that she was lucky, because he himself had always thought about not going to school. Miranda was surprised. She hadn't expected such words that even sounded like encouragement. Chris, the boy's name, said he didn't have any school friends. He suggests to the girl that she go to the library when he is out of school. The girl wonders if there are a lot of picture books there, to which the boy replies that there are. Since then, they often went out together. The boy shared with the girl his worries that he had never told anyone. The girl was grateful for this trust. Those times were the happiest times for her, because when she was with Chris, she forgot about being a vampire, just enjoying life. Unfortunately, this time did not last long. One day the guy came in all beaten up. The girl asked him what happened, to which he replied that everything was fine, just a trifle. After that, they met less and less often, minimizing daytime contact. She was angry with herself because while Chris was giving her support, she wasn't giving the same in return. The bully gutted Chris's backpack, resenting the fact that there was always some useless stuff in there while hatefully stomping on one of the books. They say that the next time they meet, there should be money in his backpack. The guy picks up the book and says it was Miranda's, to which the scumbags are outraged, not hearing what he said. One of the juvenile creeps started swinging at the guy to hit him, but suddenly his hand is stopped abruptly by someone. Someone in a hoodie with the hood fully pulled up over his face forcefully pushes his arm against the wall without letting go. There's a heavy impact on the wall. The man in the hoodie told them not to contact Chris again. After hitting the wall, a huge hole formed behind the offender. The hooligans ran away in fear and screamed. The same man in a sweatshirt ran up to the guy, asking him if he was okay. Opening the hood, it turned out to be Miranda. Only she had white hair, blue eyes, sharp claws, and fangs. The girl immediately wanted to explain everything to the boy. She hoped he would understand her and not be scared. After all, it was his girlfriend. The boy had a look of horror on his face. All he could do was scream and beg her not to kill him. There was only regret and sadness on the girl's face. But it was all just memories. And without noticing it, Miranda was absorbed in thoughts from which she was abruptly distracted. She remembered that she was going along with her newfound friends after all, and smiled happily and said, "Let's go." It was already evening. The sun was slowly sinking below the horizon, and the streetlights were starting to come on in the streets. Coming out of the college, the students were surprised to hear about a guy they didn't expect to meet, because they thought he had dropped out long ago. As she passed Miranda, some guy forcefully shoved her with his shoulder, not wanting to circle her like he was the king here and everyone was subordinates. Not only did this guy not apologize to the girl, but he also became indignant and rudely told the girl to watch where she was going. Miranda's friend yelled at the guy for crashing into her, but the girl, not wanting to provoke a conflict, said it was okay. The friend said that the guy was a fossil, which is what students call someone who hasn't finished his studies. The girl suddenly wondered, did she feel something? Maybe he reminded her of someone? This guy has a very bad reputation as rumors are passed from college to college, in each of which he has caused trouble. He beats up students at alcoholic parties and takes their money by force. He has such a high sense of self-importance that he calls himself Great George. Also, this guy smokes in class, saying it's just a vape and there's no tobacco in it. He's got a lot of nerve. Miranda's friends also say that other high school students try not to run into this guy. Also, he's been friends with the professor since high school. In general, Miranda suggested that they just don't run into George anymore. Jake noticed that there was something wrong with this guy. The girls didn't immediately realize what he meant, but he said this guy looks kind of sickly. And it's true, this guy doesn't look healthy. The girl just looked at him and thought that he had clearly changed. It was good that he'd left them alone, though. This guy's pouring water down his throat from a canister, in view of which the local guard became indignant, because this water was for the garden, and he drank at least 2 of them. Does he have a bottomless stomach? There's some anger and hatred on this guy's face, like the whole world owes him. Staggering through the streets, a group of college students stumble upon the guy. They are obviously afraid of him, so they greeted him quickly and politely. One of the students doesn't know who it is, so he asks the girl walking next to him who it is. She whispers to the boy that it's George from year 11. Distinctly hearing them talk, George hears them say that since he is from year 11, doesn't that mean he is now 28 years old? The boy takes it all as ridicule. He sees everything in a distorted way. He feels that everyone looks at him with contempt and disgust. But suddenly he is shouted at by the students, asking if he is all right. One girl says that the last bus for the day will be arriving soon, so they will go. Quickening their step, the students quickly move away from this guy. The guy remembered what these students said about him. He could clearly see them looking at him with disgust. He told himself that he couldn't find a job because of his employment, because he hadn't finished his studies yet, even though he was already 28 years old. And then the siren sounds outside. Everyone is rushing around trying to get home to safety as quickly as possible. Stopping near someone's car, the guy sees the very same Professor Alan Gilbert running towards it. The man quickly recognizes the guy as his former classmate George. He seems happy to see his old friend from high school, which can't be said for the guy himself, who looks with envy at all that Alan has, saying mentally that he's still as ugly as he was. The teacher tries to have a casual conversation, chatting a little with the guy, but it's late, and he has to hurry, so he says goodbye to George, getting into the car. As he got in the car, he was telling the guy what he'd been doing today, how he'd been studying with students all day, teaching composition classes. George himself remembers looking at Alan and seeing how they went to college the same year. He can't understand how someone like Alan got a job, assuming he bribed his way into it, or else he can't understand how a bookworm like him got a job. Envy pours out of the guy as he looks at the professor's car and wonders again where he got the money to pay for all this. He makes analogies with himself and says that Alan must have been fooling around while the guy himself was attending endless interviews in the hope of getting a job. He's only concluded by saying, "I have a miserable life." The boy's eyes are bloodshot, a flame of rage burning in them. He hates this world because here, as he said, success comes only to some, and others are passed over. But suddenly he is distracted by a car horn. The guy had been standing in front of the professor the whole time. Alan asked if the guy was all right, because he had been calling him all this time and he hadn't answered. He kindly asked the guy to let him pass, but the guy himself again saw everything in distortion. Perceiving the words quite differently, it seemed to him that the professor began to humiliate him, insult him. He remembered other such looks of contempt and disgust. It boiled so hard he threw the car with Alan into the air with one swoop of his hand. The car rumbled with a thunderous crash with the roof down, trapping the professor inside. The only sounds coming from the car were sounds of pain, but the guy didn't care about them. He thought everyone was a bastard. Alan groans and coughs, muffledly asking George why he's doing all this. The guy, immersed in his own thoughts, only said that criticizing him wouldn't make the people around him better. Suddenly the professor sees the guy's true nature and yells at him to stay away from him. But the guy was unstoppable. His gaze was feral and hungry. All he wants to do is kill. After the events, the students gather in the common room to discuss what happened. They can hardly believe the professor is gone. They know for sure it was that George. They were discussing the latest news and said that the police had confirmed the murder, classifying it as a rabies murder. Even though everyone thought the guy was friends with the professor, Miranda's friends complain that they don't want to attend classes because they are very frightened by all this. Miranda's friends complain that they don't want to attend the classes because they are scared about the whole thing. She asks Miranda if she's okay. The girl says she's fine. Oh, she doesn't look normal. Suddenly, a notification about the general meeting of all students of the faculty, which will be held today, arrives on the phone. The guys reacted as if they didn't expect the meeting today, or simply forgot about it. The student stepped out into the hallway and headed toward room number 1002. The girl is thinking about something of her own again. She looks rather anxious, but she is quickly distracted from her gloomy thoughts by her friends calling out to her by name. Students don't quite understand the point of meeting at such a late hour. Next, a certain door with a grate is shown, behind which George sits. The light from the grate falls on his face, forming a striped texture on his skin. The events take place in some rich family, where the woman crying tells the guy that he is almost 20, that he does not realize how much money she spent on him, telling him that enough to live at the expense of the family. This is followed by a reply, where someone addressing the mother says that if she likes money so much, why doesn't she go to earn it herself? Because if she continues to do her job like this, she will be fired. What follows is a phrase that speaks volumes about how the language to threaten him with a registration number even turned. A certain someone recalls his painful past in which many bad things happened. He recalls the phrase, "Fucking untalented asshole, wasting my time." This is followed by a heavy thump, shaking the lamps on the ceiling. George, standing in front of someone or something, asks the question, does he know how to end trash calling? Staring with eyes full of rage and hatred, he answers his own question, saying to just finish everyone else off. All the students had already gathered in the auditorium, waiting for the professor. Evelyn asks Martin where Miranda is, to which the guy replies that she's really gone, even though they were all walking together. In addition, Martin lost his mask, which he wore all the time. A guy walks down the corridor, taking his time with a medium stride, heading for the auditorium. Showing off his fangs, he says, "Today I'm going to show you all what happens if you..." Swinging the door to the auditorium open, the guy, shouting, continues the phrase, "Messing with trash." George had obviously expected to see a full audience of students here, but it was empty. He frustratedly wonders to himself, where is everyone? Looks like he's had enough killing today. On a podium in the auditorium, there was a sign that read, "Meeting in the Gunja building." In the assembled class, the guy approaches the professor and asks why they changed classrooms, to which the reply follows that wasn't it the guy himself who wrote about it? He replies that it wasn't him. There were large signs hanging on the Gunj building that said, "The Gunj building is to be demolished." Arriving at the vacant building, which is in a state of disrepair, George doubted that a general meeting could be held there. Well, however, he did go there. The guy noticed a certain figure in the building and asked her who she was anyway. They stood opposite each other, and for a moment there was dead silence in the room. The girl replied that her identity was not what he should be worried about right now. She asked the boy why he had killed the professor. George didn't take her words seriously at all, jokingly asking her, "Ah, so he was your professor?" He started telling the girl that the professor was making too much money and undeservedly living well. The girl said she didn't care about anything he said. Then she asked if that was the only reason he killed him. The guy apparently expected something more substantive from her. After a short pause, he answered her, "Uh-huh," as if it wasn't even murder to him, but rather just for fun. Miranda is struggling to keep her cool, but she immediately goes into a rage, screaming at George. She asks him that he killed a man simply because of feelings of inferiority. After all, the professor was a hard-working and kind man. But why did he have to become such a victim? It pains her to realize that a man like him is even learning among innocent and peaceful people. She tells him that people like him are the reason the world is a scary place. It's because of people like him that children can't get out of the house, and people are so scared they can't sleep at night. Why should these innocent people live in fear? The girl came close enough to the guy. The girl tells him to give up. The girl tells him to give up, but the guy doesn't seem to care at all, standing there like he owns the place. She told him to apologize to the family of the deceased and take care of the compensation. After saying these words, the guy stabs Miranda sharply in the stomach. The girl hadn't expected this from him. The force of his blow throws her several meters forward. George, with excitement in his eyes, shouts for joy that he is invulnerable. But no sooner had he gotten excited than the girl was immediately at his back, telling him that he really thought such a blow would work on her. The guy started getting lost in space. He didn't realize what had happened. He marvels at her saying it was a low blow, for he was sure the blow was full force. But looking at the girl, he realized, saying she was a vampire too. George even says with a kind of sadness in his voice that he wasn't the only special one here. He asks the girl how she even goes to college, because isn't she tormented by bloodlust? He told her to take off the mask in front of the senior. Afterward, he said he now understood why she wore the mask. The guy says she's dead if she gets caught. His sense of curiosity does not leave him, and he is very eager to find out who is hiding under that mask. But the girl says he doesn't understand something. After all, she wears the mask for his sake. Boiling with anger, the girl said that if he found out who she was, she would have to kill him. The guy was not affected by these words. He only snorted and doubted the girl's strength again. After that, he began to move past the girl momentarily, asking if she knew something. Miranda only notices the guy's movements at the last moment, but doesn't have time to react. George began beating the girl with all his might, telling her that a vampire's strength varied depending on how much blood he absorbed. He told her that no matter how much she bluffed, she couldn't do anything to him. The girl barely defended herself while the guy continued to beat her, saying that drinking one person's blood equals doubling your strength, and drinking 3 increases it 6 times. His eyes burning with rage and anger, he tells her of the pleasurable feeling of flesh being ripped to shreds and bones being shattered. He remembers how he became the man he is today. It all started at a certain club. Completely drunk and not thinking straight, the guy lay there not understanding anything. Then some men in suits surrounded him and offered him a drink of blood, saying that after that he would be reborn. The lifespan of a half-blood vampire is only 5 years. However, if one is lucky enough to get into a lion family, then it is possible to increase this duration. When that lifespan comes to an end, their group can join them. The men standing by the wrecked tractor trailer watch as the guy gleefully drank the blood from the driver and passenger. They say it usually takes a month to digest the blood, but this guy came to in 2 days. They also notice that this kid is a lot crazier than they thought, looking at all the destruction he's wreaked on the road. George beat the girl so badly that a column of dust rose where she lay. He approached her to make sure she was helpless, taunting her as he did so. However, the girl didn't even let him finish, rising abruptly and asking him, "Finished?" The guy can't understand how it happened. He was beating her and felt her bones breaking and her flesh tearing. But he suddenly realized that if she was unharmed, then what was it getting? George looked at his hands, which were so badly mangled it looked as if they had been run over by a paver machine. He started screaming in pain, writhing in agony and lying on the floor. Miranda approached the boy, asking him if he was in pain. She said that the professor was in pain too, because he was in so much pain. He didn't understand how it could be like that. She proceeded to tell George that the professor was no longer suffering, because he was dead. However, his family would continue to suffer for the rest of their lives, all because of what the guy had done. The girl can't understand, she asks him. How could he kill his friend? After all, he himself was recently a man like her or Alan. Continuing to squirm in pain, George says that he was just jealous of Alan. After all, Alan was born into a poor family, while the guy himself grew up in wealth. However, their roles reversed. Miranda says that if the guy had worked hard, he wouldn't be the way he is now. But the guy says he's just gone off the rails. He's remorseful, or pretends to be remorseful for killing the professor. The girl looks at the guy with disdain, recognizing his insincere words. Her gaze is filled with rejection and disappointment at his attempt to deceive her, but the guy kept saying what she wanted to hear. He said that, come to think of it, Alan was his only real friend. He starts to rise, to which the girl looks up frowning, for anything can be expected from him. The guy says only a friend could play the victim in the bathroom. He must have bullied Alan even when he was in high school. Miranda is pissed off again, and a little more and she can't contain herself, revealing her true nature. Taking off the mask, the girl tells the guy that the reason he'll always be trash is because he doesn't grab the opportunity. At the right moment, George swoops in, telling her that she should have taken off her mask, because now he's going to ruin her face. He swings his fists at her, telling her that she's a stupid idiot because vampires regenerate anyway. But the girl, with a touch of her finger, made his fist stop. Twisting his arm, she says that in that case, she'll make it so he can't regenerate. And then the guy realizes that he is completely under her control. Terror and hopelessness overwhelm him. With a light sweep of her arm, the girl twists the guy in the air as if he weighed nothing. He falls to the floor with his arm twisted upside down, unable to resist. The boy looks at Miranda, his eyes filling with memories. Images of past encounters pop up in his mind. He recalls a conversation between 2 male vampires in jackets who said that if you meet a lion, Be sure to bow at his feet, and don't even try to look him in the eye. They wanted to tell him something else, but they said he probably wouldn't meet someone like that. George insisted on being told, and the guys said if he actually met one, he was dead. The guy asked who. He was told other, namely a white-haired vampire. After Miranda's ferocious attack, the building has undergone devastating changes, transforming into pictures of chaos and destruction. The girl lifted him into the air and punched him while in free fall. He begs her not to kill him, promising that he will take care of compensation for Alan's family. Miranda interjected that he would take care of the compensation, whereupon the boy was silent for a moment. She said that in that case he should die, looking at the guy with her blue eyes. She then instantly hits him with such force that he is literally pressed into the pavement. Because of so much damage, the guy starts to simply fall apart. Looking at all of this, memories came over the girl, triggering her emotional reactions. She remembered her childhood friend yelling at her not to kill him. But she wasn't going to kill her friend. But George deserved it. The girl looks sadly at everything she has arranged, realizing the possible consequences of her actions, whereupon she turns around and walks away as if she had accomplished what was required of her. What's the point of taking countermeasures against vampires? Talking at the crime scene, the guys tell each other that the body has turned to dust, so it's impossible to investigate. They look at the mere things lying on the pavement and wonder, how do you catch a ghost? One of them snickers, saying they need ghost hunters to catch them. The guys walk away and one of them turns around, telling his friend to cross himself. He asks, "What's up, ghost hunter?" "No, not a ghost hunter. A ghost," one of the men said, looking at the guy who'd come to the scene. Patting the guy on the shoulder, the man complains about the sloppy work of the forensics team, saying it's just a worthless investigation. The guy apologizes and does nothing but keep repeating, "Yes, sir." The detective is yelling at the employees to finish up quickly so they can get out of here faster. He asks if there are any leads. They tell him she's a couple. The man asked him if there were any witnesses. The guy with glasses and a tablet in his hand said a guy and a girl, but they had alibis. There was no video surveillance or cars nearby, so there was no possibility to take the recordings. The stern detective asked, "What about alibis?" He was shown surveillance photos of the two boys and girls, but the distance between the building and the crime scene was more than 20 minutes, so they had an alibi. The angry detective kicks the young criminalist, telling him that he should try harder not to deal with such embarrassing things, adding that today he has no lunch. The guy quickly apologized and went back to work. This detective has the highest rank among them, so the guy in glasses has to work with him, although he is not happy with such a boss. A man asks if there's blood. He's told there's no findings. Suddenly, a tall guy appears behind the men talking about the crime. The detective is startled at first by the suddenness and asks who he is. The guy with glasses greets him as the leader of Diego's group. With a smile on his face and kindness in his eyes, the handsome guy praises them and asks him to enlighten the case regarding the details. The detective himself regarded the lad with wariness and malice, asking who sent him and whether he had come to spy from another team to take all the honors for himself. He shoves the guy off with his hand and suggests that he'd better go take care of his own cases. The guy shakes off his sweatshirt as if to show the detective that he's not very pleasant to him. Suddenly, he grabs the Detective Lambert's hand sharply, looking at his watch and saying that it looked rather expensive. Lambert starts to wave it off, saying that it cost him a lot. Stan wouldn't let go of his hand, saying that detectives don't usually use cologne, but he could pick up a slight odor of it coming from the watch. Also, he asked, "Don't watch stores customize the straps before they sell them? After all, this watch looks quite expensive and delusional." The detective was all but indignant, ordering him to let go of his hand. Noticing the time, he told Lambert that judging by the difference, the clock was more like Russia time. And if you think about it that way, a known black market drug dealer had just gotten out of prison and was on his way back to his country. Stan squeezes the detective's hand tighter, telling him straight in the eye that he didn't know there were still unscrupulous people accepting watches as gifts. Lambert visibly changed in his face from such words, apparently not expecting anyone to criticize him. The guy patted the detective's shoulder with the back of his hand, telling him that it was just a theory and to relax. He added that he should think about how to speak more politely, because subordinates were people too. The guy in glasses mentally admires him, saying that Stan Faber is the only one who has the courage to say everything to the face of Detective Lambert, whom the others are afraid to touch. Stan Faber himself is the superintendent. The guy graduated early, has a phenomenal memory, thanks to which he can remember any detail even if he saw it only once. He also has an arrest record that has exceeded 80% since the establishment of vampire countermeasures. He even won a prestigious national award at a young age for outstanding service in innovative arrest techniques. The list of his accomplishments is truly enormous, so people simply nicknamed him the Ghost who hunts vampires. While the men began accusing the detective of dirty deeds and threatening to investigate, Stan whistled a tune to himself and stepped lightly over the yellow fence. The first thing he saw was a huge dent in the asphalt, as if some meteorite had fallen. CSI says the victim was thrown out of the building and it appears they fought. He added that at least we don't have to worry about one vampire anymore. The guy then looked at the building next door, which also had a large dent in the wall. Stan says that if it was a fight, then there should have been evidence scattered all over the place. By inference, he says it wasn't a fight. It was a one-way beating with no chance for the victim. He said confidently that this was no ordinary vampire. Many people began to gather around the destroyed building. They shared with each other various information they had heard. A guy holding a microphone in his hand yells that there is definitely a vampire on campus since there have already been 2 incidents at the college. While in between the first aid tents, he agitatingly shouts that the administration is doing nothing about their pleas for something to be resolved. Miranda's friends look at the guy shouting with the microphone with slight bewilderment, but agree that he is saying the right thing. The administration does nothing, and besides, it would be much safer to study online. The girl tells herself that from now on, she should be even more careful. Turning around, the guys walk out of there. Evelyn asks Miranda where she was yesterday. The girl replies that she just had a stomach ache and left early, apologizing for not telling her. Suddenly, a male voice sounds behind Miranda and calls out to her, drawing the girl's attention. Turning around, the girl sees a handsome young guy who clarifies her name by saying, Miranda Whiteley. Her friends immediately started making different theories as to who he was, even suggesting that he was her boyfriend. Boyfriend? Why, they're a good match. Miranda remembered that this was the same guy who had asked about where he could find the police station. The guy himself, realizing he forgot to introduce himself, corrects the problem. He told her pretty much his entire bio, quickly pouring out a ton of information to the poor girl's ears. Ha ha! That's how you meet girls! The girl listened to the boy and after a short pause said, Are you a detective? The guy said she hit the bullseye, and so they walk side by side, Stan even taking off his jacket, apparently because he's sweating. Miranda walks with him very warily. The girls around them immediately began to gossip, discussing the guy walking next to Miranda. They clearly admired him, saying that he was at least 5 feet tall, and judging by his body, he was definitely some kind of movie star. Miranda wonders what the detective is doing here, since the cops talked to her yesterday and they saw no problem with her alibi. And as if reading her mind, the guy says he's here to look after her. This doesn't seem like a normal case, so the girl must be very scared. He offers her to eat together, letting her ask him anything she wants. The girl has to pretend she doesn't know anything. She asks the guy what happens when you catch a vampire. The guy tells her that it's something that is not publicized, so most people don't know what's going on. He tells her that a vampire's weakness is his heart, but if it's pierced or shot, they still regenerate quickly. However, they have come up with a method whereby a vampire is bound with a wire under high electrical voltage running through their body, then lowered into a furnace that is over 2,000 degrees Celsius. Stan says that this way vampires burn without leaving a trace. Miranda hates vampires, but she is one herself, and it's a fate she certainly wouldn't want. The guy says he came up with the method himself, to which the girl jokingly says that he seems to really dislike vampires. Stan says he just wants to go back in time to 10 years ago. He said he was going to get rid of all the vampires and turn back time to the way it was before, when people would be able to go out on the streets at any time without fear, having fun and singing songs loudly, just enjoying life. The girl only looks at the guy innocently, trying not to give away the excitement on her face. Walking into one of the eateries, the guy immediately ordered a whole feast of different dishes. He hasn't eaten this kind of food in a very long time, so the amount on the table, he intends to eat pretty quickly. Girl only got herself some rolls. The guy tells her to get more because he's buying. The guy grabs a fork and knife and with joy on his face offers to both eat and chat at the same time. Miranda thanks for the treat and picks up the chopsticks. However, the girl can't eat even a bite. Even one smell of food repels her. even though she has smelled that aroma of delicious food many times. Her attention is abruptly diverted by a short exclamation from a guy who catches her eye. The guy had accidentally stabbed his hand with a knife, and his outcry was caused by the sensation of pain and surprise. The girl is worried and asks the guy if everything is okay. Stan replies that he only cut his hand when he tried to cut the meat. The guy said there's nothing to worry about because he sees blood every day. Miranda begins to show noticeable changes on her face that indicate a severe internal attack. She suffers from an unquenchable thirst for blood that begins to torment her. Stan says the wound is pretty deep and starts licking his arm to stop the blood flowing. He instantly turns his attention to the girl, realizing that his actions or words may have caused her reaction. She started acting suspiciously, lowering her gaze sharply to her plate of food as if trying to hide something or avoid the guy's gaze. The girl is very worried. She reaches into her bag and grabs the wreath of thorns, reassuring herself. She feels like this guy is testing her on purpose, trying to find out who she really is. Miranda mentally tells herself that she's figured out his plan. He knows vampires can't eat food, and he's watching her reaction to blood. The guy apologized for the blood and told the girl to hurry up and start eating the food before it gets cold. But seeing that she didn't even touch it, he asked her if the food looked unappetizing. Looking at the girl who was getting quite nervous, the guy said, "Or else." The guy moved very close to the girl, continuing the phrase, "Are you the one who can't eat things like that?" The girl gets nervous and replies to the guy that what is he talking about? But Stan tells her that is there really such a person who doesn't like good food? He looked at the girl and said that it would be quite possible if she were a vampire. Taking the food in his chopsticks, the guy tells Miranda that vampires only drink blood and beverages. As soon as they eat something, their bodies begin to reject that food in agony. Looks like he's got her cornered. All the girl can think about is how did he know she was a vampire? Is he really going to arrest her right here? She wanted to pretend her stomach hurt, but that would only create more suspicion. With trembling hands, she grabs the chopsticks that lay next to her plate. Observing her reaction, he turns to her and says, "Did I what? Said something stupid?" Stan continues the sentence, and his look at the girl takes on a note of reproach. Miranda immediately began shoving the food into her mouth, stuffing her cheeks and apologizing to him for eating while he talked, because the food smelled so good she couldn't resist. Oh, her poor stomach. The guy was greatly surprised and began to wonder if he had mistaken the girl for a vampire. The girl starts talking to him, grabbing roll after roll with her chopsticks, telling him that it's so cheap, but there are so many ingredients inside. She eats the food very quickly, playing dumb, saying that she supposedly didn't understand what he was talking about, because she was distracted by the smell of delicious food on her plate. The guy told her not to worry about what he was saying, and to just eat. After all this pretending, the girl literally turns her stomach inside out, because she ate the kind of food that she doesn't digest at all for obvious reasons. Miranda paled as she sat on the toilet lid, telling herself that she didn't think she'd live to see this moment. I hope the guy isn't sitting in the next stall. Fortunately for the girl, everything turned out safely. However, she realizes that in the future she should be much more careful and vigilant to avoid similar situations. After what happened to her today, the girl even begins to pray, promising that she will clean the cathedral every time, just let God help her even a little. She prayed in her voice and was asked to be quieter. Once again, Stan, who is all happy in his face, talks about another successful meeting. The girl looks at the guy and says to herself mentally that the prayers didn't work, so she won't clean the cathedral anymore. The guy said he was just out for a walk, but this meeting was clearly fated. Miranda brushes off the idea, mouthing the words that everything that happens is merely coincidence, and there is no reason to believe that there is any hidden connection behind it. The guy turns his attention to the rolled-up balloon in her hand, telling her if they're the rice donuts that were sold in the cafeteria. The girl says yes, they are. She wanted to take them home to her younger siblings. She turns away abruptly with the roll-up in her hands, turning only her head in the guy's direction, and out of politeness asks if he wants one. Stan immediately refuses the treat because how can he do that? That's right, treats are for babies, Miranda says with relief. Phew, heh heh, what a blessing. And then quickly leaves the building. Turning around one last time, she shows him a roll of rice donuts, telling him that her siblings love bread. The boy stares after the girl, watching as she hurriedly leaves the building and takes a glance at Miranda as she leaves. The girl says to herself with joy on her face that it's finally goodbye. The hardest thing that could have happened today has already passed. With his scalpel raised in the air, the guy shouted that now was the time for them to act, instilling a sense of determination and preparedness in the rest of those present. He shouts to all the students present to prove to each other that they are not vampires, for those can heal very quickly. The fellow herald and his supporters held their hands up, rolling up their sleeves and thus showing off the band-aids that cover fresh scalpel cuts. The students are shocked by such radical methods. They are surprised that the whole student council did it. Craig says the vampires won't be able to use their powers under the sun, so they'll turn them over to the police quickly. He realizes that these methods are radical, but says that those who don't do the same will be under suspicion. He starts agitating everyone to do the same, shouting for everyone to prove to each other that they are not a danger, demonstrating that they are not vampires. There was panic in the crowd, and everyone began to suspect each other. Miranda stood there dumbfounded, not sure what was going on, thinking that today was not her day. As she endeavored to leave the place quickly, suddenly her movement was cut short, as a hand from the crowd held her in place. Suddenly finding herself in this position, the girl immediately felt a wave of panic, for she thought that now she would be surrounded, and the real truth about her would come out. However, a hand from the crowd, it was Stan, who grabbed Miranda and began to lead her away. Turning to the girl, he voices his emphatic warning to get out of here. Miranda looks at him puzzled and doesn't understand why all of a sudden. Well, his suggestion is reasonable considering all those crazy people with scalpels. As they approach, two people get in the way of the girl and the guy, creating an obstacle and asking them to take a test before allowing them to proceed. Miranda stands with a look of shock on her face. The men in the blue jackets say they won't cut deeply with a scalpel. They'll even treat the wound quickly, just enough to make a drop of blood appear. A student council member asks why they are going to leave without taking the test. The girl says they shouldn't make anyone do that, and it's wrong to suspect everyone. She is told that after the things that happened in college, how can she even justify herself given the situation? Miranda says she's aware of the whole situation, however. She is immediately grabbed by the arm. Droplets of sweat broke out on her face. She's nervous, realizing that now they might realize who she really is. When a girl's sleeve is rolled up, she reacts with obvious displeasure and resistance, manifested as loud yelling and active opposition. The student council people were surprised because the process was over much faster than they expected. After all, the presence of a pre-applied band-aid is discovered on the girl's arm, which is bound to cause not only surprise, but also leads to a noticeable reaction on her face. Stan reported that this action has been done before, which begs the question, why are they expressing a desire to repeat it? Miranda immediately changed in her face, yelling at the student council people and resenting why they wanted to make her do it again. With deep appreciation and simultaneous slight bewilderment, the girl turns her gaze to the guy, showing a mixture of rather positive emotions through her facial expression. Craig, the student council president, came up to them and said that she could have put a bloody band-aid on it. They tell him they've already done everything. The guy says he has to see for himself because he didn't see them do it with his own eyes. Just as he was about to grab the girl, Stan intercepts his hand. He says Craig has no right to force people to cut left and right, and waving a scalpel around like that could land him in jail. He squeezed his hand even tighter, causing him to scream for him to let go. Stan said he understood what the students were going through, but it was too much, telling him to let them go. Craig says he can't just trust him and let him go. After all, they have to catch a vampire today or risk getting kicked out of college. Stan shows off his police ID, saying he can put everything on the line. The student council got nervous, not expecting the cops to be here. The boy said Miranda was helping him with his investigation, and if they didn't want to join in, at least let them stay out of the way. The girl looks at Stan and realizes that he saved her from a bad fate today. The girl looks at Stan and realizes that he has saved her from a bad fate today. And finally, the girl is already home. She lies next to her younger siblings, lovingly watching them sleep carefree. Suddenly, she gets a message on her phone from Stan, where he writes that if she gets into any trouble, she should let him know. The younger ones woke up immediately, asking Miranda if she was writing to her boyfriend. They could even tell it was a boyfriend by the way her fingers were typing. Ahem. Don't they want to be detectives in the future too? The girl says to herself that this guy is clearly not like the others. She wonders why he let things go downhill. Anyway, she's not so sure, but she thinks he's a good person. Standing on the roof of a house and admiring the city at night, The guy was looking at his phone and typing something. Stan, holding a lit cigarette in his mouth, says to himself that he never thought he'd meet her like this. Her, a pure-blood vampire. Standing outside the church, the two thugs are talking to each other. The one in the jacket suggests that they just leave and that's it. But the bald one, who is the new boss, says that this is not the way to settle things, and it is necessary to settle everything. The main thing is to find the priest. A voice comes from behind a large bandit. "Looking for me?" Before he can turn around, the bandit starts to be rude to him. Before them appears a handsome man of sturdy build with a scar on his face, calmly smoking a cigarette and holding a spiked stick in his hand. Obviously, judging by the reaction, the bandits were expecting to see a very different kind of priest. The boss, named Norman, begins to stutter slightly, pretending to be the toughest and most dangerous man here, hesitantly threatening the man. He waves papers in front of him for him to sign. The priest listened to the bandit's speech and said, "Then," and then swung his stick. He slammed it into the asphalt with all his might, causing it to split in two. The bandits are quite frightened by this, though they try not to show it. "Maybe this isn't the best place. Why don't we go somewhere quieter?" the priest went on to say, after which he put out his cigarette on his tongue. Oh my God, no one would sin before such a priest, that's for sure. The bandits left the church in a hurry, remembering that they had some business to attend to. And they must have forgotten to turn off the iron. Good thing the priest reminded them of that. Norman asks the guy what's wrong with this priest, who was he? The guy asks, "Didn't he tell you already?" If the town rumors the guy had heard were to be believed, the priest was far from being a holy man, for he was in a gang. He's known to have hundreds of murders on his record, so there's a mountain of bodies behind his past deeds. Standing in front of the front door, the children watched as their sister stood praying for the past hour. Well, it seems even a pure-blood vampire is afraid of this man. Upon entering the house, the children, including the girl, immediately greeted Father Michael joyfully. Their faces played with smiles of joy. The children immediately began to hug the man, which the priest himself is even surprised. But the girl said that he had just been away for a few days, so she was just happy to see him. Miranda asked Michael how his training had gone, adding that she had also heard he was volunteering. The priest basically answered only, "Nothing much. Father Michael, their Catholic priest. He has become almost like a father figure to Miranda. It is only because of him that she is able to attend college classes. He also gets very angry when it turns out that the girl was in the form of a vampire." With a quick shout, "Father Michael!" the door opens. They were elderly ladies who came to thank the priest for fixing the water pipe, and also to wish him a happy birthday by presenting him with a jar of apricot wine. Miranda looks curiously at Michael's reaction, watching him peruse the jar of wine. The priest says there is no cause for concern because anything to help the sisters. The girl understands these words to mean that her father liked the gift. She quickly tells him to shut his teeth, saying that she hopes he likes the taste of the wine and all, and that they should go. The girl thinks that since the priest is not angry, he doesn't know what happened. But unfortunately for Miranda, her father seems to know all about what happened the other day, so he tells her that they need to talk. And so, standing on the roof, Father Michael gazes thoughtfully into the distance, while the girl lowers her gaze, awaiting punishment for what she has done. A cigarette is slowly taken out of the pack, and his gaze flickers to something in the distance, catching his attention. A cigarette clutched motionless in his fingers, while his gaze intently followed a few men hidden behind houses in the distance. With quiet rustles and quick movements, they run from one hiding place to another, as if playing a dangerous game of hide-and-seek. As he is about to light a cigarette, his attention is suddenly drawn to Miranda, who turns to him, breaking his seclusion. The father brings up the past incident, emphasizing that it was her who was involved in the incident. Slowly bringing the cigarette to his lips, he lights it, inhaling the puffs of smoke, thus breaking the serene silence. After taking a couple of puffs, the priest starts telling the girl that what she did was reckless, because what would have happened if she had been caught? She has to think not only about herself, but also about her brothers and sisters, about the people in their neighborhood. The girl said she had no choice but to do it. Her father himself said that because of this prank, she was forbidden to attend college until she cleared her head of all bad thoughts. Miranda resents the decision and tries to challenge it, saying it's unfair. After all, she has worked so hard to settle here. She feels very bad about this punishment, for she has just begun to get used to college. Before that, she had obediently stayed out of the house for 10 years. She had done everything he asked without causing trouble until now. The priest said it didn't matter what kind of beast she was training, because in people's eyes, she is nothing more than a monster for whom no mercy or regret is known. The town was hit by heavy rain. Everyone walks with umbrellas, which makes it look like a field of flowers from a bird's eye view. A tent is set up in the middle of the city, where people are chanting for the government to pay attention to them. They are demanding action against the vampires. Miranda strolled leisurely through the rain, watching them chant. The people were shouting that it was only a matter of time before the vampires sucked the world dry, so they had to be eradicated before it was too late. The girl couldn't remember anything before she came to the orphanage 10 years ago. There was only one thing she realized as she reflected on herself. The people were a wide field of dazzlingly beautiful flowers, and to this place she did not belong. She thought maybe her father was right. I mean, no matter how hard she tried. To humans, it looks like a threat that lurks in the shadows, waiting for its moment to strike. A monster that knows only thirst and hunger. All the memories she holds remain locked away, like a treasure trove without a key. There are no friends to share these lost moments and experiences with. Her heart beats faster even at the thought of falling in love, but she realizes that she can't express her feelings as if it's an insurmountable barrier for her. All she wanted to do was just be herself, be human, without any masks or limitations. Standing outside a club called the Red Bomb, guys in jackets recruit a new supporter, telling him that he'll be a great replacement for the brat who recently toppled over. They told him that he didn't need to learn anything. The main thing he had to remember was one thing, that he must obey the lions completely. The boy immediately says he understands everything, but he just wants to know what lion means. One of the men begins to explain to the boy that the lions are the 6 leaders who control the vampires in this country. These lions are completely different from regular vampires. Their overwhelming power allows them to control countless monsters such as vampires, and just one lion can destroy an entire city. The boy is surprised and asks if he can become a lion too. The man says no, he can't. Suddenly, a strange man in a gray coat approaches their campaign. He is immediately told that he can't go any further, blocking the passage with his hand. A guy mocking a man asks him why he is wearing such a strange outfit, to which the man replies that he has come to see a lion. A piercing look of indignation was directed at him, accompanied by the words, "This isn't a zoo." After that, the guy moved on to threats, saying that if the man didn't get out of here, he would take him out himself. With minimal attention to the guy, the man suddenly pushed him to the side as if stepping through an invisible barrier and continued forward, not letting himself stop. Flaring with fierce anger, the vampire uttered in a threatening tone that he would send him to meet his death, preparing to put his threat into action. The man, with only a couple of powerful blows, tore apart the 2 guys standing next to him. His actions were so fast and precise that they seemed almost impossible. With full determination, he headed towards the entrance of the building, striding with confidence and purpose. Another vampire gets in his way, but that won't stop him. He just repeats, "Bring the lion," gazing in with blood-red eyes, showing off white and sharp fangs. A subordinate addresses his boss. "What are we going to do, Mr. Lucy?" while standing in a building whose windows offer a view of the city at night. The man merely replies that he sounds amused, then orders him to be let in. Did the hard food cause him to replace his teeth with gold ones?